The Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Motsoaledi, says the Pretoria High Court has no right to interfere with the government decision to terminate Zimbabwe Exemption Permits. A legal wrangle is ongoing after the decision to terminate permits was found to be unlawful. The Home Affairs Department wants the Supreme Court of Appeal to overturn the judgment. We're now joined by Advocate Simba Chitando, a lawyer representing the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit holders. Thank you very much, Simba, for your time this afternoon. So just to be clear from the onset that this is not a matter that you are involved in for this process, at least. It is being led by the Helen Suzman Foundation, but you were in court following the proceedings. What are some of the arguments that you heard from both parties?
Thank you for having me. Greetings to your audience. You're quite right. Our matter is going to be proceeding for permanent residency for ZEP holders. Helen Suzman's matter was to set aside the decision to end ZEP, something that I think all the parties that went to court in favor of ZEP holders argued. I did follow, as many people did, the arguments yesterday, and I support, obviously, the arguments that were submitted by Helen Suzman Foundation. I was troubled by the arguments put forth by the Minister. The Minister of Home Affairs is well aware that all government decisions are subject to review, can be reviewed and set aside if they are inconsistent with the Constitution, as the decision to end the ZEP was, obviously.
Mm-hmm. What troubled you about the Minister's arguments yesterday?
Well, the suggestion that the courts have got no right to interfere with a decision that he has made. The court has a right. They've got a jurisdiction over all matters, all decisions that are made, not just by him, but by other members of the government. That's important. The other thing is that the biggest point, I suppose, is what the Promotion of Just Administrative Action Act says about public participation. He did not follow public participation in making the decision to end the ZEP. That's something that the court found unacceptable, unlawful, and were quite scathing in the manner in which they delivered, at least in the HSF matter, and in the manner in which they had difficulty with the minister's decision. The minister has, all decision makers, not just the minister, all decision makers have to consider the provisions of PAJA, provisions of administrative action that are equal, or at least fair and just and equitable.
How did the Helen Suzman Foundation's lawyers counter that argument, or the assertion that the courts essentially should not interfere in this decision?
Well, from what I could, what we all saw, they asserted what the law says, what's inside the act, what the act expects of a decision maker. That's what the HSF counsel, from what I could pick up, arguments that were made by them, and they're correct arguments. The act is very specific. All decision makers have to make a decision that's procedurally fair, that is lawful, and rational and reasonable, and that was not the case here.
So the judgment there from yesterday is reserved, but this is not the end of the road, because you still have to bring, I guess, your organization, your own action against the Home Affairs Department in court. Tell us about that and how that's going to work out.
Yes, the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit Holders Association is going to be filing its supplementary papers and other papers in regards to pursuing what I think and what I've always thought to be the only logical conclusion to this legal wrangle, this saga, which is the right for every ZEP holder to apply for permanent residency. They've been here far too long. They've been here for over, I think this will be their 13th year, and their rights are not settled. We've got court cases. I know that the Zimbabwean Immigration Federation has got another matter, Part B, I think, of their case that's pending, and it's back and forth. No certainty for ZEP holders, and they need that certainty. Their families need that certainty. I'm also quite concerned with the fact that the minister said that he would like to change the Immigration Act to prevent anyone, or at least the ZEP holders and most foreign nationals, from applying for permanent residency at all, even though they've spent more than a decade in the country, their own properties, worth millions, they're part of the community here. They're important contributors to the economy, and I think it is quite wrong to push them out in the manner in which he's doing.
Are ZEP holders anxious?
Very anxious. We all welcome what HSF has done. I think they've done, their orders has helped ZEP holders out a lot. But notwithstanding what they have done in the court order, the judgment that they got from the Pretoria High Court, it isn't a path to permanent residency for those who want it. Other ZEP holders, other foreign nationals may want to leave South Africa completely because of the tensions that are quite high. Even for Zimbabweans or foreign nationals who are in the country legally, many are beginning to ask themselves the question: Do they want to stay? I think yesterday the BBC released a documentary on foreign nationals, sometimes South African citizens who have another African citizenship, and they've been targeted. That's what we saw in the documentary from the BBC. Many are asking themselves, should we now leave? And I think what needs to happen is the courts to provide a pathway to residency for those who want to stay and who have made a decision that they have to stay, notwithstanding the xenophobia on the ground. And then we can talk about those who want to leave. That's where we are. Ultimately, those are the two choices that all foreign nationals have. If you're going to stay, you have to have permanent residency. It doesn't make sense to stay without it. And if not, then I don't see any, I don't think South Africa will be, a place for any foreign national.
South Africa is perhaps not the only country, not on the continent. We'll give the continent context in a while, but I think throughout the world that is dealing with the issue of migration, right? But if we take a look on the continent as well, we're also not the exception to the rule. You take a look at a country like Malawi, for instance, where you are also finding some complexities, where there's also refugee camps. In Uganda, for instance, where there's also refugee camps. What do we do as a continent, right, when we speak about the issue of migration, but also looking at the push and pull factors that exacerbate it?
I think that's a question. Your first question has to be put before the Pan-African Parliament. I think they have been conspicuously silent on this issue. There is migration problems throughout the continent. You're quite right. There are migration issues in Malawi, in Zimbabwe, in many other in West Africa. We're seeing some tensions there, and those tensions would obviously create migration issues. So those push and pull factors is something that the Pan-African Parliament needs to discuss, because it's not a South Africa problem. I would not like South Africa to be, to be accused as the only culprit for where there's xenophobia or where there's tensions. This is something that the whole continent has to look at. But I do feel that no African should feel a foreigner when you're on African soil. We're all benefiting from our resources and our cooperation, I think.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Simba Chitando is the lawyer representing the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit holders. Thank you.